Okay, so welcome everyone. We just came out of an executive session and we are in the March 6th, 2023 regular council meeting. And actually, it seems like the first order of business is that we need to
move to enter regular session.
Oh, even though I did that before, I need to do it on video. Okay, so I'm gonna move again into our regular session. And I think we're gonna, first of all, welcome our new therapy dog, who, let's get the video on that. And, wow.
Did you want more?
Motion, do it,
Okay.
just say, I move.
I move that we move into our regular session for council.
Second.
We have a motion and a second.
Even though we did it already, all right. So, yeah, like, and so do we wanna, like,
Just all in favor?
okay.
Aye.
Aye, yes.
Yeah.
And we did that now a couple
Yeah.
times. All right, so
Thank
we're
you.
gonna, like,
This is
welcome our
nice.
therapy dog. And I think
You gonna put a pin?
Shazam, ignore the man with the pointy Very thin.
Aw.
Let's go back downstairs.
Everybody listen to the yelp.
So exciting. So,
Sure, yeah, so
we're good.
Shazam is a rescue. He is from SIXA, so we thank them first and foremost. We partnered with them throughout this process to find a good candidate. And Shazam is, first of all, he's our candidate, so it is possible that he doesn't make it through. But the good news is, if he turns out to not work, SIXA can. Thank you. SIXA has welcomed him back with open arms. He's been there about a year now. He's a 2-year-old male, and he has got all sorts of breeds in him, so I won't list through the laundry list of breeds that he has, but obviously beautiful color here. And he has been working diligently with their training staff to learn, first and foremost, good manners, because that's the most important thing that we learn right out of the gate. If he ends up working out and being our candidate, he will stay with us for 6 months to bond with the team. And from there, he'll begin his training with the Alliance of Therapy Dogs. We've also partnered with Best Friends Assisted Pet Therapy. And we just thank everybody involved, Community Foundation for helping with donations. They're going to have a QR code available to the public very soon for donations if somebody feels so compelled. We also accept lovely treats and toys should anybody feel the need. But yeah, we just are really, really excited about this program. And sit. You don't get treat, don't sit. We think the program in general would just be a great addition to the team. I think it fits quite well in Yellow Springs, and we need him as much as he needs us. So thank you guys.
Great.
Thanks, Chief. Here's the back on
Oh,
it.
yeah.
I'm not as skilled as I thought, so thank you.
Yes, it's dinner time now.
Yes, and while you're here,
Yeah.
I also wanted to reiterate that we've got Celebrate Trails Day on April 22nd. The plan is to have that from noon to 3. We hope that the bike patrol will be there again. We hope that we're going to grill some dogs and
Hot dogs.
Hot dogs. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. Yes. Can you clarify that? And of course, have Shazam in the mix. And that also segues with Earth Day. And we've got lots of things that we're going to be talking about there. But I just wanted to make sure that we're got that on our radar. So thank you.
Thank you guys.
Okay. I have a few more announcements, and then if anyone else does, and since I missed the last meeting, I probably have a lot more announcements. So I appreciated that Judy recognized John Struing at our last meeting. I also wanted to mention that when Marianne and I first came on council, John Struing was leading our planning commission and did an amazing job, really taught me a lot. I think folks noticed that we lost Uda Schenk, and another person who was an amazing asset to the village, came to meetings often. So I wanted to recognize both of those folks and all that they did for the village. I did want to mention for anyone that wasn't aware, Miami Valley Regional Planning Commission, which we are a member of, is having their annual dinner on April 27th. I know that some staff members will be going, myself, I think maybe Marianne, but it's a great opportunity for all council members to network with the region. As a side note, I got reinstated to be on the executive board again, so the only village representative, and I also volunteered to be on the Institute Steering Committee, which I still need to figure out what that means, but apparently that's significant. We got our RAISE grant submitted. This is the Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity. This is our third try, which I've heard is a charm. And I want to thank Cindy Seek, who has been, you may remember last year, she was recognized as a volunteer nationally for the village. And also Josue stayed up until 11 o'clock, I think, to make sure it got in the mix. If we get this grant, we will have a trail from the train station out to Clifton. And this is a 9-jurisdiction collaboration. It's a pretty big deal. Josue, tell me what's going on with bike parking, because Gary posted something on Facebook. So what's going on with that?
We had a meeting a couple of weeks ago, right before I went on vacation, to identify what will be potential sites, and we also discussed the design concepts for the bike parking. Our next meeting is going to be with Public Works Director Johnny Burns, the suitability of locations, and then also the temporary parking arrangements. If you recall, the Bike Yellow Springs group has organized bicycle parking for large events. They had the last event was Street Fair, and they coordinated a very successful parking setup for bicycles. So there's two elements to this. One will be the special event bicycle parking, and they have a design concept that's based on portable construction of 2x4s that make them portable and weather resistant. And then the other piece is long-term parking, bicycle parking throughout the village. So there's more conversations to be had. I don't know what Gary posted, but we're certainly continuing those conversations about enhancing multimodal transportation throughout the village. With Gary is bicycle and bicycle parking.
Yeah, well, it got a lot of traction, so everyone in the region seems really excited. And since we got Mark Heiss here, I want to make sure that it's been elevated, that we hope that when you're soliciting volunteers for street fair, that you include volunteers for the bike parking, because it's very important that we think about those sustainability aspects. And that's one thing I know Gary mentioned today. It was really hard to get volunteers, so I hope that that's an option for people to volunteer for. That's citizen concerns if you want. So I want to also, was that all? Yeah, I think my last announcement is a huge shout out to our fairly new finance director, Amy Kemper. And I don't think everyone realizes what a mess our finances were in. And Amy, I just want to say, especially after that last finance committee meeting we had, we so much appreciate you being here. Thank you for your dedication. Please do not leave. We need you, and you are doing an amazing job. So so I just wanted to really, you don't know how much we all appreciate, not just how you're cleaning things up, but also you've got the right attitude for our team. So thanks a lot. Yes. And any other announcements before the big one? Okay. So, for those of you who don't know, tomorrow is our village manager, Josue Salmeron's birthday.
Oh, thank you,
We got a great little card. Actually, I think I found a picture of you that was on there. And
I opened this when I'm in my office.
exactly. Yeah, don't put it on the screen. But we do want to say, we greatly appreciate your dedication, all that you bring to the village. Your family's amazing, and I'm glad you get to take the day off tomorrow. So
Thank you.
Happy birthday. All right, yes. Happy birthday. Okay, and with that, I will move into, I guess, the consent agenda. We got 2 items. And so first of all, we'll look at the minutes from our last regular session. Can I get a motion to approve?
Second.
Okay, and then we have an amendment, I believe. Judy, do you want to highlight that?
Yes, there was an amendment in the section where you're discussing single-use plastics that Mark Heiss from the chamber did not say he agreed with the ban, but that he would be open to discussion of the ban. So I made that change.
Okay, great. So I guess this is a 2-step. So first of all, motion to approve the amendment.
I move to approve the amendment as read.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, and then secondly, approving the amendment or the minutes, which I already asked for. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. Second is our minutes from the housing work session. Entertain a motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Review of the agenda. Marianne, I know you have something.
Well, we said we'd do it at the end of the meeting.
Judy said she'd rather us do it now.
Oh.
You're going to add it to the agenda.
Yes. Okay, I would like to add to the agenda, so should I make the motion now or make it at the end of the
You
meeting?
just say you want to add an executive session.
I'm going to add a motion for an executive session at the end of our meeting.
Okay, for the purpose of?
I believe it's to consider the annual evaluation of the village manager as it relates to his employment and compensation. Did you
That.
say?
That,
Excellent.
yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, so that sounds good. Anything else we need to add, subtract, or modify on the agenda? Okay. If not, then Kevin Stokes, petitions and communications.
Yes. Thank you, Brian. So the clerk has received a letter from Moira Laughlin regarding the historical designation of part of the village. We also received a response to that communication by Denise Swinger, responding again to Moira's concerns. A letter from Joan Northway expressing her concern about paid parking, and excuse me, a letter from Stuart Young expressing his opinion regarding reusable plastics. And that's what we have this week for petitions and communications. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
And Kevin, by the way, I wanted to say great job at the last meeting. Sorry that I caught you by surprise.
That's the way I do it.
Sometimes emergencies happen. And actually, I realized an unwritten communication was, I got a lot of requests to bring back the big pumpkin, so I don't know if we can repair that.
Oh,
but
then look for it.
Yeah, so
We're talking about October, right?
yes.
Okay.
Yes. So I just wanted to give you like
Early
an
warning.
advance notice. Okay, so we don't have any second readings tonight, so we'll go ahead and do the first reading of Ordinance 2023-10, and we can do that by title only, please, Judy.
All right, this is repealing and replacing section 881.06, credit for tax paid to other municipalities of the Codified Ordinances of the Village of Yellow Springs, Ohio, to change the amount of credit granted by the Village of Yellow Springs for income tax paid to other municipalities.
Okay, that's a mouthful. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, Josue.
Thank you, Brian. This has been a long conversation spanning multiple years. I wanna recognize someone in the public, Henry Myers, who's been a champion of making a more equitable income tax structure in the village. So, Henry, you're a brave man for going on social media and continuing on this issue.
I'm not running for election, though.
So there's been a conversation over many years of the reciprocal tax adjustment. We've been in conversation with Rita over what is now over 2 years on this topic. I provided a memo with a lot of data in your packet, and that highlights what are the common scenarios of a credit factor adjustment. There are communities that do 0, others do 50, and there's some that go as high as 85% of credit factor credit for the income tax paid to the municipalities. In my memo, I included a scenario or estimates for a variety of scenarios what level of income or additional revenue we would get if the credit factor is adjusted. Based on the information and conversations with Rita and other municipalities, a 50% credit adjustment seems reasonable, and we're recommending that and have included what that revenue projection would be for 50%. I'm happy to answer any questions you have on the data that we have provided. Also, I welcome the opportunity, if you have questions or need additional data or information, we will be happy to provide that at the next meeting.
So Josue, maybe just a few basics. Let's make sure people know what Rita is and just kind of.
Sure. I'll try to put a timeline to things. In 1983, the citizens voted to have in place the 1.5% income tax. For many years, our tax administrator was the city of Dayton, and then just the city of Dayton couldn't keep up with our work, and so we needed to find another administrator because we were too small to do it ourselves. We had to build significant infrastructure to do it ourselves. So we partnered with Rita. Rita is essentially a council of agency. It provides tax administration services for 422 members throughout most of the state. So we're one of 422 members out of 667 cities and municipalities in the state that collect taxes. So Rita represents the vast majority of cities and villages that have an income tax and needs income tax collection. So that's Rita. Out of the 422 members, the majority, 213 members offer partial or no credit on income taxes paid. A lesser number, 209 of those Rita members offers 100% credit. I provided some analysis of the municipalities that offer a zero credit. That represents 164 municipalities. Of those 164 municipalities, 76.8% have income tax rates of 1.5% or less.
So thank you for the data, and if you could do a scenario or two, that would be helpful. So for example, if we were to offer no credit, would that mean that a person who lives in Yellow Springs and works somewhere else would pay the full income tax at where they work and the full income tax in Yellow Springs?
Yes, that's correct.
So your recommendation of 50%, which I support, if the person works in a place where their income tax is, let's say, 2.5, then and here it's 1.5, then how would what would they end up paying?
3.25. So 50% across the board means an additional 0.75%.
Okay, so regardless of what they pay at their place of work, they'd be paying half of our income tax.
Correct.
Okay.
Can I give another explanation on that after a conversation with Rita that might be helpful? Do you mind?
Yeah, please, Amy.
Because I had that same question. And so I actually called Rita and had them explain it to me like a lawyer could understand. And what she told me was that if someone paid $4,000 in tax to another community and they owed $2,000 in income tax to the Village of Yellow Springs, the credit, per the languages we have it drafted, would be $1,000 of credit. So you would not get 50% of what you paid to another community in credit, but you would get 50% of what you owed to the village.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? The other thing that we need to discuss about this ordinance, and I apologize for not having brought this up earlier, but it occurred to me as I was sitting there reading it, is when we want it to take effect. It can take effect January 1, 2023. The Board of Tax Appeals has determined that you can make the determination now mid-year and let it take effect January 1. We just need to make that clear and make sure that we are all on the same page on that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I also like highlighting that because that means that if somebody wants to pay their full share to the village, they don't have to ask for that credit. So yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I'm sorry I'm making you get back up, but so how long, when you say mid-year, so like when could we do this by and still have it impact the whole year?
So in passing this, what month is it, March? So if it takes us two readings, it takes us a while to get through having the ordinance become effective, we can look back to January 1 of 2023 so that all of tax year 2023 is subject to this ordinance.
Yeah, I understand, but
Before
is there a
tax day.
deadline?
For us to get this done? That I don't know. I didn't research that particular issue since the ball is already in motion. And from my conversation with Rita, we're moving soon enough in the year for it to be able to be retroactive. I don't know if it needs to be. I can look into that for you if you'd like.
So, Amy, thank you while you're up. So if we do make it retroactive, some point soon, there'll be a bigger little glitch, if you will, or a bump in people's, the taxes that they owe. So I guess my question would be is, April, for example, said person would owe an additional 0.75 on all the income that they've earned up to that point. Is it up to the employer or up to us? I mean, how does that nearly half a year's worth of municipal tax come out of their paycheck?
If I'm understanding your question correctly, if we make it retroactive to January 1, there will be no half-year calculations to be done. It'll be easier for the taxpayer, and I believe easier for us if it's full year. Do you want to speak to that, Amy Kay?
So it would be a courtesy withholding with, say you worked in Beaver Creek, you can go to your employer, say Beaver Creek, I need a courtesy withholding for Yellow Springs. They can do that, or you can make estimated payments. There's no penalty because you won't file until April of 2024, right? So there's no penalty per se.
So if I do nothing else, it'll all get reconciled at the end of this calendar year when I do taxes. Okay.
Correct.
How will people know that they owe this tax?
There will be advertisement on our end when they go to file for their returns. Rita, we will have to instruct Rita to send notifications to taxpayers that are residents, that they're now required to pay this tax.
So, is it okay? I'm switching gears.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Thank you, ladies.
So, I guess the short version is I would like to talk about it. I guess I'd like to hear what other people think. I expressed a little bit of this in Finance Committee meeting the other day, so when I learned that it was going to be a topic. I think the short version is that I am generally inclined to vote no at this moment. I guess I'd like to have more clarity of what we'd use the money for. And that means having an understanding of what our budget situation is for next year. And then B, I'm concerned about the larger sort of discussion in our community right now around particularly the school levy. And feel like, would like for all of the taxing entities to be communicating and for us to be communicating to the public about what they can expect around around finances. And then, just in an ongoing way, and I'll just say this is interesting because I don't personally have any problem paying it, I don't, and I'll say like in our household, we have one income earner who, is in this situation that works in Dayton. I'm actually in the process of getting money back from Columbus in the way that we had talked about, and everyone out there, if you would like to pitch into Yellow Springs and you worked somewhere else, especially during COVID, like me, or your job changed, you filled out an IR-25, it's a little bit of a pain in the butt to do the paperwork, but Yellow Springs will get money at the end of the process, is my expectation. When I look at the numbers, if I'm understanding this correctly, with the data that you shared, Josue, 42, so if I look at the census data, 42% of people in Yellow Springs make less than $50,000 a year. And as I understand it right now, 50% of the people that would pay this make less than $40,000 a year. So that's the closest comp I can find based on this current data. I think the ongoing question that we have in the village is if we could pass a progressive form of taxation where the wealthier people paid more, I would do that in a heartbeat, but we're not allowed to. So we're trying to figure out how do we pay for the things that we need to pay for and recognize the impact on the people who can least afford to pay it in the village. So again, I'm very open to the conversation, interested in what folks have to say. I guess my hope was that we were going to talk about this after the school levy, so that there was a debate, conversation that was happening in the community. I'm hesitant to contribute to any kind of concerns that may exist that that we're not paying attention to all these dynamics as the school's issues are coming up. So that's just where I'm at, and I'm interested in what other folks think.
I support it. I think that by paying the income tax, if you live in the village and work outside the village, paying the income tax, you're paying into the police department, streets, the pool, everything the community uses that money for. Otherwise, if you don't pay any income tax, and we know you may be paying property tax if you own property, but the amount that the village gets is not that. I hear what you say about paying more, where everyone is wanting more money, yes. And I think it's reasonable that if you live in the village, you make a contribution to the village through this tax, which is pretty minimal, really.
So what did you say, 40%? 40,000 or 50%? 40,000.
The number I shared, and Josue, correct me if I'm wrong, but as I understand it, of the people who would pay, the outflow job characteristics data that's on page 4 of I guess maybe that was just a number from that's page 4 from your memo, right? Yeah. Essentially, it's almost exactly 50% of workers
Under 50,000.
are making under 40,000.
Under 40.
And I'm just noting that in our community, and I'm stating the census data because honestly, sometimes I'm not sure, I know, I talk to people who sort of forget. Like we think about ourselves, there are people who think about this as a rich community. There are rich people here, but statistically, 70% of people in Yellow Springs make under $100,000, 42% as a household, and 42% of income earners in Yellow Springs make less than $50,000. That's just the census data.
So you answered that, thank you. So everyone heard that again. And, it's kind of, we expect all these amenities. We have all these amenities. And there are only a certain percentage of the community members that can actually afford to contribute for the amenities. And then a significant amount of, 70%? That this is something that would be, maybe possibly difficult for. So I guess I'm on the fence about it.
Okay.
I'm on the fence.
So, Kevin, before you say anything, so, Josue, can you just clarify, is that accurate around who's working outside of town and that you're gonna have these? And I feel like that calculation's hard to make because Columbus and Dayton are clear, but there's also this aspect of, it depends on what the tax rate is for those communities. So are you able to clarify
Yeah,
that?
so there's two, if I understand your question correctly, there's two things to clarify. One is what is the potential number of individuals impacted and what's their earnings. So the data that Gavin is citing, we pulled information from a report that was published on economic data for the village. It's titled "The Community Gentrification and Equity in the Village of Yellow Springs." It's conducted by WGI Inc., collaboration with ARP of Ohio. So in their assessment of economic data, they looked at what were inflow and outflow job characteristics of a community. What that looks at is how many people are coming into the village to work in the village. They don't live in the village, they just come to work. How many residents live and work in the village, and how many residents leave the village for a job. So the number of people that leave the village for a job, according to 2018 census data, it was 1,116 individuals. Of those 116 individuals, 49.9%, so about 50%, make $3,333 or greater. That's the floor of that income group. So they make more money than that. 50% of them, or 50% of them make less than that, and that's where Gavin is saying the $40,000, because that's the upper limit of that bracket. So that group, that group that is making less than 40,000, it's about split. 24% of them actually are earning $1,250 per month or less, and 26.1% of that group is earning between $1,251 and $3,333. So that's the breakdown of those two groups. Now, what does an income tax, additional tax look like for someone who's earning $40,000? We're talking about $300 on an annual basis for someone who's earning who's earning $40,000 outside of the village. That I put a table in the memo that shows the income group, and I have 5 different income groups and how much tax they would pay in the year. And the groups are for 10,000, that taxpayers are expected to pay an additional $75 per year. At 25,000 is an additional $188. At 50,000 is $375. At 75,000, it's an additional $563. And at $100,000, it's an additional tax of $750 for that resident.
Excuse me, yes. Well, I first of all want to thank you, Josue, for the information that you provided. I say that when I come to council meeting, if while reading the packet, I am smiling. And I read this and it was very informative. It solidified some things I knew. It shored up some things I wasn't sure about. But I think it's clear with the examples, if folks who want to find themselves in here, please be careful to do the math correctly. 0.0075 times your income. And when you look at the entire picture, the region, we're just putting ourselves about in the middle of where most of the municipalities are. Like you said earlier, some are giving 100% credit, or a lot are giving lots of credit, and some are doing very little credit, and we're right in the middle. So it's normal, if you will, for us to do this kind of thing. And when we began this budget year, we talked about these types of things that we would have to consider. And with respect to the other taxing agencies, myself, Brian, Josue, whenever we've been in these other meetings with the other taxing agencies, we've talked about this. So we're not surprising anyone with this. Brian, to his credit, was very intentional about really slow rolling, if you will, this conversation while we had time to have these conversations with the other taxing agencies. So I think we're good in that regard. We're doing this for the village. No individual entity is benefiting from this any more than the village would be. So in short, I appreciate all the information. I think it makes the message clear, and it gets us closer to being in a better place in terms of revenues in the village. Of course, there will be other things that we'll talk about to try to either bring in more revenue or find places to cut in our budget. But while we're talking revenue generation, I think this is quite appropriate, and I do intend to support this endeavor.
Okay. I'm open to some citizen comments, and then I'll say a few things. Henry, come on up.
I'm Henry Myers. Before I get into little tidbits I prepared, I'd just like to maybe, as I think, some of the people who work out of town are presently paying village income tax. It's only, if they're working in a township and there's no township tax, they're paying village tax if they're working at the base. So in this number that you've come up with of all these people, you kind of have to think of that. Okay. I'd like to tell a tale of two families. One family lives in a house that where the property tax is $5,000 a year. Everybody just give a thought to what their property tax is, and that. Okay. That family pays $650 per year to the village. That's only 13% of, we all pay it. It's a pretty huge property tax that we pay, admittedly, yeah. But only 13% goes to the village. So that family only pays $650 to the village. I pay more of that to senior center every year. Well, not pay, give. Okay. And I don't live in a $5,000 house or whatever that is. Yeah. Okay. The other family I'd like to point out is one that's making $40,000 a year. They're renting. Maybe, $40,000 not that much, obviously. Their big thing is maybe keeping their kids in school. They are paying more to the village for roads, for police, for all the things that Mary Ann mentioned, than this other family. I think, I don't know, so that. At the federal level, there's a big thing going on now of trying to get people making a lot of money to pay some income tax. And I'm not saying that there are billionaires in the village, but I think there were probably people in the cemetery rolling over in their grave thinking that the federal government is doing something like that if Yellow Springs doesn't. Come on, we're supposed to be liberal Yellow Springs. Let's show it. Another thing I'd like to point out is a former council person, not here. When I mentioned, about the taxes and having to potentially tax the people in these $5,000 property tax homes, this person said, but they're so nice people and they'll move out. Well, I was gobstruck enough that I did not respond, but there are nice people that are having to move out as it is. We have new development. We have at least a new development going in. As I understand, the houses are going to be at least 300,000. There's not that many opportunities in the village for a bunch of people to make enough money to afford $300,000 houses. Politically, which is a thing, I think, if you don't do it soon, if you have another, 90 families, it's going to be more difficult politically, so this is kind of an opportunity. And just, I do appreciate that not everybody is in this, $5,000 property tax type home, that this is going to reach some lower income people. And that's a decision that you're going to have to make. It's, it's going, any tax policy hurts some people, helps some people, whatever. But, just one of the things that goes with the job. And lastly, I would like to hit at this, a number of people are saying that this is a double tax. No, we pay all kinds of extra tax. I pay state income tax. I'm not saying that because I also pay village income tax, that it's a double tax. And so paying for Dayton, you're paying for their facilities and police and roads and everything. If you also pay for the village, which you're here, a heck of a lot more people are here, a heck of a lot more than they are at their workplace. We deserve to have everyone taxed. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Henry. Any other comments from citizens? Okay, Riley, come on up. Yes.
Hi, Riley Dixon, Yellow Springs News. I have pretty straightforward questions, all that kind of tie in together. One, would this have been put on the table if the village's deficit wasn't so high this year? Two, just respect to the village's need for money. Does the village have to do this? And could there be other options? Like Gavin brought up, there are a lot of concerns becoming increasingly vocal regarding affordability, the expected school levy, and the MTFR levy that's about to take effect. Are there other options given these anxieties within the village? Thank you.
And that kind of segues into my comments. So I think first of all, we've talked about this for 2 years, and as Kevin indicated, actually, I was the bottleneck. I've been the one that said, we're not gonna do this, we're not gonna do this. But in our 2 joint meetings that we've had with the taxing entities, we've talked about this, and there's an understanding and awareness of that happening. So I think that kind of relates to what's important to me, and kind of Gavin's comment about what are we doing with this revenue. We are trying to close the, I believe it's about $350,000 deficit that Amy's going to talk about a little bit later, and a projected larger deficit moving forward. The other piece of that is, so we would definitely not have this on the table unless we needed to do it. Now, I think it's important to keep in mind that we're not increasing income tax. We're asking people that live in the village, that enjoy the many services that we have, that we want to continue to pay their fair share. And I understand that a lot of folks that make choices to work outside of the village, I believe largely that's because they can secure bigger incomes. I think that Henry really hit the nail on the head around what's difficult about this calculation is you'd have to look at each individual to find out where they're working. And again, if they're working in the township, no income tax, all right? So, I mean, there's a variety of things that I think make that, that calculus difficult. The last thing I want to say is that there are 2 initiatives that we're very serious about. One is the utility roundup program, and that is a response. We continue to expand that for folks that we want to make sure can stay in the community. And the second thing is the guaranteed income. And Gavin didn't elaborate on it, but we're looking at ways that we can, sort of tax equally, but figure out how, certain folks that are under a level of income can take advantage of a guaranteed income so that they can stay in the village. So at the end of the day, since everyone kind of indicated they're either in support or on the fence, I will say I'm in support of this, but we're going to make every effort to figure out for folks that this hits hard, which I think is actually going to be a small percentage, what we can do to mitigate those effects. It's difficult, but again, we all live in the village, we all enjoy all the services, and not paying income taxes is problematic. But we are doing this definitely because we have to do it.
So I would feel more comfortable once we have an idea about how we would go about mitigating those effects.
Sure.
And the fair share, what is that? And what are we gonna do with, utility roundup, guaranteed income, and what else to ensure that we do mitigate those effects?
Yeah, and I think that's probably where we're, gonna have a divided vote maybe. It is difficult. I would feel more comfortable as well, but I appreciate that Gavin's like trying to do the right thing. But I think that, it's important that a lot of folks that are working in Columbus and Dayton are contributing, from my perspective. But I totally understand. I'm conflicted like we all are, so. Yes.
Can you mentioned the $350,000 gap. What number are you talking about, Brian?
Maybe should we? I think it's whatever we looked at.
The deficit.
That's our deficit for 2020.
It's 200, well, on the first page, it's 200 and.
Okay, so I did qualify that I might have been misremembering that number. So, what I know what's in front of us is potentially raising revenue by 240 to close that gap. So if I misspoke on what that number is from 2022, but basically what I'm talking about is addressing a budget deficit that we know is going to increase. So if we don't change services. All right, so we are not going to take a vote, but I think it's pretty clear where council members stand, and I think that's a signal also to the community. If you want to talk to council members as well as to staff about questions that maybe need to be responded to, and I think this was a great discussion, and it's a difficult one for all of us. Yes.
Just for bringing this back, would folks generally be all right with adding a section 3 that states the ordinance shall take effect and be in full force at the earliest date permitted by law and will be retroactive to January 1, 2023, which then lets you get the full year in if it can just be added in the ordinance section.
So I'm okay with that.
I'm okay with that.
Yes.
Okay. I think maybe the other thing I want to mention, because this is going to come up later, is what's really put us in this bind is all the stuff about how the state has cut the local government fund and we're short 563,000. We wouldn't have to be talking about any of this if the state government was supporting local municipalities. And moving forward, they're also planning to cut municipal tax as well. And we'll talk more about that later.
So can I ask one more question? So, for instance, is there any interest, what could we use these funds for, say, an affordable housing fund? So I'm thinking about is there a way to mitigate right now that there might be support for on council?
I'd support that.
I guess, and maybe the follow-up question from what Judy's saying is that allowed?
We can make decisions about our budget.
I would defer to Amy Blankenship, but it seems as if the folks who are already paying taxes are just generally paying into a fund, whereas now you're telling all the people who do not work in Yellow Springs they must pay into a particular fund, which seems sketchy.
And I do not support that.
So I know of, one example comes to mind when the city of Mason put an income tax increase on the ballot, and they earmarked that increase specifically for fire and EMS. This was like 15 years ago. Beyond that, I'd have to research that as to whether or not you could earmark income tax that you were bringing in under, that wasn't a voted increase that taxpayers had a say in. I need to look into that. I can get you an answer by next reading.
Yeah.
So let me just throw this in. I mean, in a conversation with some folks, I did have to distinguish between, what the reciprocal tax calculation would do versus and how an increase in the tax rate would come about.
Right.
So I don't know if we need to sort of
So
make
under
sure that-
Ohio law,
Yeah.
to increase your income tax, we'd have to go to the ballot.
Mhm.
But under your tax code and the rights that you have as a village, you can change your reciprocal section without going to the ballot.
Yeah.
And the basis of the income tax is that the citizens already voted a 1.5% income tax. That was voted in '83.
And we are not increasing that.
We're
That
not
is not
increasing
what
that.
this is, yes.
Yes.
I mean, I guess the way I think about it, when I said I support Gavin, what you brought up is that the 40,000 that we put into the affordable housing fund is going to contribute to the deficit for 2023. And so that's where I think we can make those kinds of decisions, which I think is different from the earmark thing, so.
Yeah, but the way that happened was, the question of, do we need to do this? Did we know? So I don't think we know currently what our gap is for next year. This number is not what our deficit will be for a next year's budget. And I guess everything that we added on at the end of last year, everything that we did last year, as I understood it, was within the context of, these are the basics that we need to do. And that one piece was at the very end without any real discourse. So I don't know, I don't want to, I feel like we should have accurate, honest conversation about the way these things interplay, that's all. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, Brian, if I may add to the overall deficit, we're looking at overall all funds deficit around $3 million. Now, we were confident that the general fund deficit, as we presented to council and council approved for 2023, we were looking at a $300,000 deficit, which we were confident that we can close through cost savings and potential additional income sources. We've deepened our relationship with employers to help, particularly Cresco, expand jobs. But I think the Yellow Springs News covered a lot, that we have a overall deficit, our funds deficit need to be covered. We talked a lot about our management philosophy when it comes to our finances, that we're conservative on the revenues and we estimate on the high end on the expenses to consider all worst case scenarios, but we work diligent throughout the year to manage costs. But there has been an ongoing deficit because we are playing a lot of catch up on infrastructure and a lot of activities. So I know we'll get a little bit deeper into the financial summary report. We can make all of our audits available. They're available on the website, on the Ohio Auditor's website. So we can provide any additional information you like on our finances. But I think one of the things that we highlighted, that for 2023, that we were looking at significant deficits, that we needed to consider additional revenue sources, and that included utilities and reciprocal tax.
Okay, good discussion, and we'll have more discussion at the next meeting. All right, so we're going to do Ordinance 2023-11 by title only, please.
Yes, this is adding Chapter 454 to the Codified Ordinances of Yellow Springs for regulation of EV charging stations.
Okay, can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Josue?
Thank you, Brian. This is we're breaking this EV charging stations into two-step process. One is setting down some codified ordinances that will regulate the installation, maintenance, and operations of the EV charging stations. That's something that hadn't been done. We find that that is critical for us to do, as it lays the foundation for how we will universally manage EV charging stations throughout the village on public property. We'll come back to council with additional legislation setting the particular rates. As I noted in my memo, I want to thank Amy Kemper, who's come up with a more equitable strategy to charging for EV charging. As a plug-in electric vehicle, she's very familiar with the systems that not all vehicles charged at the same speed and the same quantity. So it's helpful to have that factored into our business model. So you'll see that in the second legislation next meeting. Any questions?
Questions? All right, I think this is pretty straightforward. I'm glad we're like tying it up. And as Josue said, Amy Kay did a great job of highlighting the difference between having a Tesla and having like another vehicle. So this new look at how we do it, I think it's spot on.
Which is effectively kilowatt hour versus time.
Yes. Okay. So if no questions, I don't think we need to take a vote, and we'll go into Resolution 2023-12. We can do that by title only.
Yeah, this is one of those beautiful ODOT things. This is final resolution authorizing PID number 113724, County Route Section GRE Yellow Springs Multimodal Fiscal Year 23, agreement number 35530.
Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, Josue.
Thank you, Brian. This is what I hope to be one of the final legislative steps to get this project started. Reminder on the project, this is 100% grant funded active transportation project. It's 1.8 million. I included a map of all the impacted areas. In short, it is a lot of intersections and a large section of a multimodal path along Dayton Street.
Can you remind us where it will be? I mean, I know where it's going to where it's going, but is it going to be on the south side of the street?
Yes, it's on the existing area where there's a sidewalk and an asphalt area. This project will take away what's existing and create a new multimodal path.
Sort of combine the sidewalk and the
bike path-ish.
The side path, yeah.
Side path, yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, and I think the other aspect is it's going to be a lot easier to maintain because we're asphalting it as opposed to concrete. But yeah, the idea is it's a combined hike bike path. So ultimately, I think the vision that Johnny has shared with us is that we'll also extend that to the high school and have more safe routes, assuming that that's where we will still have a facility. Okay, any other questions? Okay, comments, questions from citizens? Okay, obviously this is pro forma to move the project forward. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Resolution 2023-13, we can do by title only as well. Actually, Judy, do you mind reading that in full?
I don't mind.
Thank you.
This is recognizing March 18th, 2023 as a day of transgender visibility and affirming the Village of Yellow Springs as a safe and welcoming community for transgender persons. Whereas the Village of Yellow Springs identifies itself as a welcoming community of opportunity for people of any race, age, sexual orientation, gender identity, culture, income, ability, political affiliation, or religion, and whereas the lives of transgender and non-binary people have historically been devalued, discredited, and invalidated politically, legislatively, and in myriad settings across the United States, and whereas recent legislation targeting youth seeking gender-affirming treatment and their parents and guardians has been enacted in 4 states and is currently under consideration in 15 states, including the state of Ohio. And whereas the state of Ohio currently bans transgender athletes from participation in girls' sporting events, affirming a pattern of increasingly restrictive, invasive, and small-minded legislative actions in our home state. And whereas while the Village of Yellow Springs has no ability to provide sanctuary to minor children who may be under attack from such legislation, No village entity is required to enforce such restrictive measures, and it is generally understood that non-enforcement of measures meant to limit and dismiss transgender and non-binary persons is a life-affirming and compassionate choice. Now therefore be it resolved by Council for the Village of Yellow Springs, Ohio, that Section 1, Council for the Village of Yellow Springs wholeheartedly supports all non-binary and transgender persons every day, but most enthusiastically on March 18th, which has been designated as Transgender Day of Visibility in the Village of Yellow Springs. Section 2, Council for the Village of Yellow Springs supports and encourages local and regional efforts to welcome transgender and non-binary persons and others who are being targeted on the basis of their gender identity and/or gender expression. Section 3, Council for the Village of Yellow Springs is committed to the protection of law-abiding village residents and visitors from abuse, harassment, and harm, regardless of their gender identity or expression. Section 4, no village department or employee shall deny equal access to village services based on gender identity or expression.
All right, so I will move, and is there a second?
Yes, second.
Okay. So I want to thank Emily Seibel for bringing this to our attention, and Judy Kittner for doing an excellent job of articulating this in a resolution. And I don't know if there are any other comments. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay. And our last piece of legislation is Resolution 2023-14. We can do that by title only.
Thank heavens. This is strongly urging the Ohio Governor and members of the Ohio General Assembly to restore the local government fund to pre-recession levels.
Okay, can I get a motion?
I move.
Second.
All right, so I referenced this earlier, and Mary Ann, thanks for bringing this forward. Hopefully we're all paying attention to the Ohio Municipal League emails and, just the continued ridiculousness of our supermajority Republican state legislature. So I referenced this earlier about just the loss of local government funds, which have put us and most municipalities in pretty terrible positions. So obviously this is a no-brainer. I did want to ask, have we moved forward with being part of that policy committee?
Yes, we
Okay.
did. OML has created a new advocacy group, and we are joining that as part of our membership with OML.
So this means that we're at the table to, be actively involved in all the stuff that's going on at the state legislature. I might also point out that for those that are familiar with the rainy day fund, which was the argument for cutting the local government fund, that's at its maximum, and still the governor will not release any of those funds. And it is ridiculous. I mean, so we're talking about billions of dollars that could go to support local municipalities, and now they're talking about taking away municipal tax as well. So it's unfortunate.
Brian, I think just about the time when we got on council, the state did away with the state estate tax.
Yep.
Which used to provide $200,000 to $400,000.
Yes.
And that several $100,000 a year.
That's correct. Yep. And that's, was around the same time that they cut the local government fund in half. So, all right. So, amazing that I still have a job advocating at the State House, huh? All right. So, any other comments? All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
You had asked about making a comment, and that is coming right up. Citizen concerns, you can jump up and say your things, coming right up.
Yep.
I see Emily's hand is also up, and Emily is online, and her hand is up. I think that Emily wanted to speak as well.
Yeah, okay. Well, this is citizen concerns, so this is a time on the agenda where we ask that you speak no more than 3 minutes on any topic that's not on the agenda, and just make sure to state your name, and we'll go from there.
Well, thank you. I wasn't actually expecting to speak tonight. My name is Alyssa Paolela. My pronouns are they, them. I'm a newer resident to Yellow Springs. Moved here in October, and a big factor, there were many great factors on why I wanted to move here, but a big thing was the LGB protections. So I thank you for passing the resolution. I just wanted to mention, I'm sure you're aware of the anti-LGBTQ bills that are happening at the State House. And there's just a lot of fear and uncertainty, especially among young people, families. And so I just want to make sure that we're remembering them in all of our efforts and initiatives, that it's a really scary time right now to be trans, to be non-binary, and to be open about that. So if we could envelope those folks within our community and within our workplaces and churches, that will go a long way to make improvements in this world. Thank you all.
Thank you. Appreciate those comments. And can we mic on Emily?
Emily, you can.
Oh, hello. Yeah, I just wanted to also echo my gratitude for the transgender legislation that you just passed, and also to invite everyone to the second annual Transgender Day of Visibility. And I also just want to say that when we reached out to ask for this legislation, it was a really quick turnaround, and Judy Kintner wrote an amazing piece of legislation for you to vote on. So we're very, very grateful. Thank you, Judy. Wonderful job. And anyway, so it's the Transgender Day of Visibility event, has a great lineup of speakers, an amazing group of folks are coordinating this event, including Alyssa, who you just heard from, as well as Philip O'Rourke and Shadia Alvarez of the Coretta Scott King Center, and Alexander Scott. And it is Saturday, March 18th at 6:00 p.m. at the Coretta Scott King Center. And our keynote speaker will be Shelby Chestnut, who is an Antioch alum and the executive director of the national organization, the Transgender Law Center. And they are also the board chair of Antioch College. So we would love for you to join us. And we would also love for someone to come and read the legislation that you just passed. So feel free to reach out to me if you'd like to nominate yourself for that part of the presentation. So thank you again for the solidarity.
All right, thank you, Emily, and we will definitely make sure that we have one or more council members there. And it'd also be great for us to have promote that event on our Facebook page. I'm sure Philip will facilitate that. Mark, did you want to? Okay.
Reserve it for the street fair meeting Thursday afternoon.
Okay, cool. All right, any other citizen concerns?
Right here.
Yeah, it is. Come on up, Wayne.
Handouts. Nice.
All right, wow.
We can pass
Take
them
it.
down.
Yeah, I've got only made 4.
So we have to share.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
Can you?
My name's Wayne Goulden, and
Pass it down and we.
the picture that they're passing around is actually taken in Keith's Alley just this afternoon. And it's a picture of, turns out it's Dino's dumpster. But this is not aimed at Dino's. You know, he's in a tough position, like everybody who backs into Keith's Alley is in a tough position. Everybody is. It's there because Rumpke, it turns out it used to be Vince's, now it's Rumpke, was trying to pick it up, and they don't have enough room to maneuver their truck to get to that dumpster. Okay, and I think that's a fairly common problem back there in the alley. It's just not enough room for hardly anything. And in short, there's just not enough room. And we're kind of concerned because people keep talking about future development ideas about Keith's Alley. And we'd love to do it if you have enough room to do it. Remember, first and foremost, it's a trash alley, it's a delivery alley. It's not a pedestrian walkway or anything like that. And if you look at the picture and you replace Earth Rose there, the butt that's fallen down, with Dave Chappelle's cement shoebox, right? Imagine what that's going to do to people like Dino. You know, where's Chappelle's trash going to go, for example? You know, there's no place for anything now. It's going to get worse. Anyway, so that's pretty much what I have to say. Just an awareness, please, that Keith's Alley is pretty limited, and you be real careful about what you do with that space.
Right. Thank you, Wayne. I appreciate you bringing that forward, and we will look at it. Yes, we'll have Dino come up next, yes?
Hi, Dino, a lot of Dino's Cappuccinos. Yeah, we've addressed this, trust me. When I came in Saturday morning, we usually have Friday pickup. And when I came in Saturday morning, I called up the number immediately. And it's Vince Refuse, and they've gone out of business. They sold to Rumpke. So when I called up the number on Saturday morning, I went right to Rumpke, and there was nothing I could do. I left them messages, whatever. So we addressed it this morning. I called them up this morning. They said they would put a work order out. They came out. For what reason? The dumpster that's there has been there for 25 years that way. So Wayne was saying it might have been a bigger truck that came through than what Vince has. But anyways, I've told them we've been emailing back and forth and talking all day long. And I just was telling Wayne, I said we got to get this taken care of tomorrow. The village is coming on me. I know it's going to be only a matter of moments that this is going to happen, because again, over the weekend there's just a lot of trash that's made anyways. That's why we like to have it happen on Friday, and then it just frees everything up. So trust me, we're addressing it. I'm on Rumpke about this, but again, this switchover just came. Today is when the switchover came, since they bought out all the contracts from Vince. So we're just in this little leeway. I told them is whatever you got to do afterwards. We have to address this now. I don't care where you put the dumpster after this, but right now we got to get this done. So we're on it and we're working on it. So this will be resolved one way or the other. Will be resolved. Trust me.
Thanks, Dino.
Yep.
Great. I have a feeling that if you're in the mix, it will get resolved. So, all right. Any other citizen concerns? Okay, then we're going to move into special reports, and we've got our folks from SOPAC here, and I'll let you explain what that acronym is. And I don't know if you're both coming up, or Phil, or yeah, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Luke Selfridge. I'm Executive Director. Let's turn it on. Did I kill it?
It's on. It's on.
All right. I'm just not that loud.
I'm Phil Lepla. I am in-house counsel and Southwest Ohio Director of Sustainable Ohio Public Energy Council.
So we are a council of governments. We represent 22 different public agencies across Ohio, primarily in Southeast Ohio. But Dayton actually is one of our newest members. So we're excited to be working with communities this side of the state. This picture I absolutely love. Phil just put together. It's a lot of our community grants over the last year or so. So I just want to pause on that for a second. There's a lot of cool stuff going on there. So that's the first electric rural transit bus in the state of Ohio. There are 20 EPA clean power cities. We represent 19 of them. That's what we believe is the first net zero EMS station in Ohio there in the bottom right corner. And then we've been assisting a lot of our communities, excited to see EV legislation for the chargers today, helping communities across the footprint, some cases deploy the very first public charger in the whole county. So it's been fun and exciting and very necessary work. And on the extreme corner, you'll see the police car. That's in Logan, Ohio. That was the first first EV police car in the state of Ohio. So we helped assist with that through the chargers as well. So all fun things that have happened really within the last year or so on those. We are a public agency. So we are a council of governments by structure. We're a nonprofit. We are subject to public records laws. We are open meetings, regular audits. So in the energy space right now, that's a welcome thing for most folks we work with, that we are beholden by the same rules as local government. We're governed by two different governing groups. One is a General Assembly, that is our supreme governing body, and every community has one vote at the table there. Whether they're a village of 175 residents, as is Amesville, Ohio, our smallest, the city of Dayton, 140,000. They have one vote. We believe in democratic rule, and we actually largely have consensus rule based on the way we govern. So that's pretty exciting in this day and age. We have a very politically diverse group of folks around the table, but also in the same direction when it comes to the work we're doing. We are 100% renewable across, and our bread and butter is electricity. We're going to talk about natural gas tonight. I'm just going to give Phil some heartburn, but there's a reason for it. But electricity, we do represent 100% clean energy programs and have been a national leader in that. We're the first in the country to do 100% default with the CCA program, a community choice aggregation, through our Green E certified program. We were the first net metering community in Ohio on the community choice aggregation program. So we like to push the envelope. We like to do creative stuff. We also assisted the city of Athens with the first carbon fee in the country. So they went to the voters a few years ago and asked the voters if they're willing to pay a little bit extra every month to generate a local solar fund. So there's now $100,000 a year going towards public solar projects in the city of Athens, which is getting ready to assist them in a 2.4 megawatt array on their sewer plant. They already have solar on the water plant. We've already helped them get battery backup on the water plant, which I believe is also the first in the state. So a lot of fun things happening across our communities, but Athens is another real gem of innovative thinking as well. If you go to the next slide that talks about our governance. Awesome, thank you. So I mentioned one is our General Assembly. Every community has a seat there. The other is our Board of Directors. So a subset of that, and we actually may be using that less as we shift towards the General Assembly being more frequent in their meetings. They meet quarterly. 5 largest communities. Commissioner Joseph from the city of Dayton is one of our members there. We also have 5 representatives at large in 5 regions. So regions of the 4 corners of Ohio, Central Ohio. 5 at large gives us the ability to have folks like Craig Butler, former state EPA director, who's now the executive director of the Muskingum Watershed Conservancy District, which is the largest in the state of Ohio. He serves on that board. We also have some villages that serve as at large, so that they have equal representation around the table as well. And they wouldn't qualify otherwise for the larger groups. If you want to go to the next. There's a quick representation of where we are, not where we're going to be. The City Council in Riverside is in the final stages of consideration of joining us as well. It's been recommended to council, so they'll be joining up with Dayton here shortly, as well as a couple of the entities here very nearby. So you're in good company geographically. We are statewide. We made the decision a few years ago. We've been very compact in Southeast Ohio, but decided that the needs for sustainable programming through a public agency were much broader than Southeast Ohio. And we've been having active conversations. In fact, today we talked to a community in 2 communities in Central Ohio on our way up here today, or my way up, you're already here. But I think that map's going to grow dramatically here short term, in several metro park systems, RTAs, watersheds, sewer districts, the like are also eligible as public agencies to join up with us directly. We'd be the 5th largest city in the state on paper if you put us all together. So even though we have villages of 100, that combined buying power lets us do some really innovative things collectively. All right. So our staff, it's not just us here tonight. In fact, this changes every time we show it. We're actually hiring a grant writer, hopefully next week, actually. So we have our team you see in front of you, other folks that have some great qualities. We've lead certified member of staff. We have a sustainability fellow placed within the city of Dayton, working on lead for cities certification for them right now. We also have outside counsel, which is on the next slide, provide legal support for the villages and cities. So when you do the really creative work, we have cut that out of this one, but the really creative work, we allow them to do the work for you as well. So if you're doing legislation on EV chargers, we're happy to have them look at it and vet it as best they can. We're also part of a lot of national coalitions, one of which is PGM-CCC, which is the Climate Cities Coalition, which includes Philadelphia and Baltimore and Chicago, Cincinnati, and SOPEC and Dayton. So we're in good company with innovative thinkers, and we welcome more. Yeah, go to the next slide. We also view ourselves as an important key part of economic development within the communities, and we look at that with the sustainability lens. We do a program with USDA statewide to help development of solar on small businesses and farms. So we have partnerships with a lot of chambers around the state. Also, the Main Street program is very near and dear to us. The greenest building is the one that you don't have to build. So helping maintain that historic infrastructure and looking ahead to heritage tourism. We are currently working with the largest mountain bike trail system east of the Mississippi is in our footprint. So they're not yet a member, they probably will be soon, but exciting work happening there and helping some of their historic coal towns make the transition to being part of it. Eco-economy moving forward with heritage tourism and also nice bike system. All right, next. So gas aggregation, and again, this for us is a change. We have historically not done gas, we've done electric since 2014. The reason is that we feel we're not doing justice to a full climate strategy if we don't consider gas. So for us to only help make electricity green, we're not gonna make gas green, that's not what I'm here to tell you, that's ridiculous. There are methane diversion strategies, but we see a natural gas aggregation program as an important vehicle for a decarbonization strategy. So helping folks do low-income energy efficiency work, to help the building envelope for them to reduce the footprint, to do the electrification transition. So whether you're looking at automobiles, but on a much smaller scale, there's a lot of money in the Inflation Reduction Act to help folks convert to heat pumps. So heat pumps and electric appliances around the house, lighting upgrades, all those kind of things that help them transition to where we can generate the electrons from a sustainable source, but we can't do that if they're still using natural gas. So literally our goal is to help shrink this program as we build it to create a more sustainable future and help create the pathways for folks to have accessibility. Most of the communities we serve are communities of low income. The city of Dayton has 30% poverty, about 3 times the state average. Many of our Southeast Ohio communities are twice the state average. So we look at this with that lens with a strong equity component, knowing that we need to be a strong partner post House Bill 6, which had a whole lot of stuff that's been in the news lately, but one of the pieces that's probably not been in the news, it absolutely gutted the investor and utility territory, which doesn't apply to you guys, but everybody else that's in AEP territory or AES or Duke or First Energy. They had an efficiency program that got gutted when that bill came. So it went to a voluntary energy efficiency program, which the utilities are not taking up a voluntary program, as you may suspect. So we look at this as a potential source of revenue to generate really creative programming. We're talking to communities like yourselves, municipalities, which we couldn't historically serve the electric program because you guys have a different style program as a municipality, which is fantastic. Keep doing that. That's awesome. But through gas aggregation, since you guys do have the ability to aggregate that, it enables us to partner with you guys. And at the end of the day, we really view ourselves as a shared sustainability office. We're a shared energy office that focuses on sustainability. So some of the other programs we have, we do community grants on the electric side. And with that, there's a regional grant structure within there. So the regional grants are to do things like connecting trails. We spent some money on the census work a few years ago. We spent about $1,000 per county on the communities we serve. That little bit, as you guys probably recall, made the difference about $10,000 per resident that was accurately counted. So that was a key driver for us to get an accurate count. I mentioned the Bailey's mountain bike trail system over in Athens County and the adjacent communities. We actually used a regional grant last year to help pay for the analysis of former coal mining buildings, which may sound really strange. They've been closed since 1956, but they're now 88 miles of mountain bike trails all around there. So as a hub for a heritage trail system, that made sense for us to help them transition to the next chapter of a recreation-based economy that gave them life and vibrancy. So it's not always focused specifically, but it's focused on a sustainable economy moving forward. So we also have a revolving loan fund. So the ability, there were grants a few years ago where you got a free level 3 charger, but it was $80,000. And for some villages, that was a big lift. So we offered up, we don't have unlimited resources, but offered up to float them the capital to be able to do those projects. And so that they were able to achieve them and then repay us for the funds that way. There's actually a legal case in Dayton right now that we helped advance for an environmental justice issue similarly. So we love the creative programming. We love to think outside the box, and we certainly welcome and invite Yellow Springs to be part of this community. We love doing new and novel things. We've been talking to other like-minded communities around the state. You can probably guess a few of them, which ones they are, how we can structure a program with natural gas aggregation that has a net positive benefit to the community, and how we can be there as part of the ecosystem. So getting folks a competitive locked-in rate, but at the same time also using the administrative fees to do really positive creative programming so we can move the needle forward. Natural gas prices change monthly. So it's a really volatile space right now versus electricity is still going up, but it's somewhat locked in either quarterly or yearly for those folks that are in the investor owned again. But for natural gas, it's a very volatile market. And so for folks that don't have the ability to research for themselves the marketplace, aggregations are a really nice way for them to provide a public option where we set the floor for what the pricing should be in. They're always free to leave the programs at any time at no cost. So if they find a better price, fantastic. But it's a nice community safety net that we've created together. On the electric side, gas is new for us, but electricity, we've had very real results. In the last year, we were successful with the city of Dayton to have an estimated savings of 30% on electricity costs last year. We were very proud of that. That worked out to about $10.5 million last year in savings directly to residents and services. So it'll absolutely be our goal to try to create a cost competitive program, but at the same time, want to be very connected and very intentional in what we're doing. Not all of our communities are in the same place. Some of our communities are going to look at it as a hedge against future growth, and that's okay. We're hoping that folks that are able to really push the envelope are going to create the models that then they can replicate in the communities that may not be in that leading edge, but can shine light, and then we can follow up with them later as the next option. And that's actually what happened with our electric program. Some of our communities have been 100% green since we started. Credit to Athens County, and Amesville, and a few other communities were doing it on their own before joining up with us. But as we did that, we actually started going to some of our more conservative communities saying, if we create a larger bundle together, are you guys willing to do this thing and have it be green power? And to their credit, they all said yes. If this is going to save us money and it's a good deal, absolutely. So we now have 19 EPA clean power cities scattered across Appalachian Ohio because it was the right thing to do. And then Dayton now is 100% hydro with the way that they're powering theirs. And again, we know there's always issues with any kind of generation, so we also do our due diligence, and we promise that to you guys as well. So for the hydro in that case, it was older hydro that we made sure there were no salmon runs involved out west. So same sensitivities for anything we're going to do. Additionally, we are looking at building generation. So long-term helping create models and pathways for folks to have access in ways that haven't been allowed or created within Ohio, but looking at how we do the next thing. So local generation, particularly as it relates to renewables, is very important to us as well. So we're very actively working on deploying assets in Ohio in ways that the private sector has not. I'll leave it at that. So welcome any questions, and I can introduce Phil here. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, we can go through the next slides. Yeah, skip right ahead. Some folks that will be excluded if you are a PIP customer. So these are folks that have payment-based income-based programs, percentage of income is what that stands for. They would be excluded. Anybody who's previously shopped for a gas contract. So if you've already done your own homework, you're happy with where you are, this does not impact you at all. If you're a large off-taker, so large industrial customers, and the cutoff here is 5,000 CCFs per year, it will not apply to them either. So it does apply to small businesses, residential, and then anybody who opts out. So there's going to be an opt-out letter that goes out to residents, and they will have the option to decide not to participate. Historically, that time may have mattered on the letters. We never charge an opt-out fee. So for us, the early termination fee is a non-issue. So if somebody misses the letter and says, oh, I don't want to do this, there's no hard feelings, that's fine. They call in simply and are able to be removed from the list in the program with no cost to them. We could go to the next one, I guess, to Phil's point, we'll roll through. So you guys have already done a lot of the hard work. So the next steps would be passing legislation to join SOPAC as an entity. Again, we're a council of governments. To activate a program, you have to have 2 public hearings, or to join with us, you would have to be to adopt the plan of governance that we have, which talks about our bylaws and everything else I already described, and then ultimately sign the charter to join SOPAC. You guys would be the 23rd member if you were to sign soon, but yeah, it depends. Somebody may beat you to it, so we will see, but somewhere in the 20s. If we go to the next one. We will say the time is important, and actually this has moved up. The natural gas market moved 12% this morning. It is dramatically lower than it was even just a few months ago. You can thank climate change for that one. Not excited about that part, but since our winter was a non-event this year, natural gas prices, there's a couple reasons. One, there's a glut that didn't need to be used. Another is that there was a natural gas port in Texas that's been offline for a good chunk of this winter. So even though they would have needed, had the winter been more severe in Europe, they would have needed the exports. That gas had to stay home, so the global market got constrained, so it dropped the price down. So the all takeaway from that is that we're at historic lows right now. So timing is fantastic actually to sign in. So even though I say it's gone up, we were at the NYMEX, which is this the natural gas index. It was high 6s back late last year. So the fact we're still in the 2s is a very good price signal. Let me go to the next.
Luke, if I may add.
Yeah, please.
We're at historic lows after historic highs.
Correct. Yes. So the reason that we were able to save so much money in Dayton, Phil and I are both political scientists by trade, and I don't relish this, but we correctly predicted the timing of the Ukraine invasion when a lot of the analysts said, that's not going to happen, no way. So we watched what was happening and thought very strongly it was going to happen immediately after the Olympics, since China and Russia had just signed an oil deal right before that, said they're not going to embarrass China with us, and that's almost exactly what happened. So we encouraged Dayton, after many months of walking through timing and scenarios, making sure they were fully prepared, and said, we think now's the time, and they agreed. And so they locked in advance. We knew there was an auction for the utility shortly thereafter, so we had an indication of where they were going to be on it, and prices went sky high as a direct result of that, because there was a lot of politics that related to oil supplies around the world. So that directly had an impact, and you've seen that your own bills. I'll say one other thing to be aware of on the gas side. There've been a lot of proposals from the distribution gas utilities to raise what's called a fixed charge. So your monthly bill that you have to pay no matter how much you use. So middle of June, if you don't have a gas stove, you're not using any gas for most of us. Maybe you have a gas water heater, but if you don't have any of those, probably nothing. You're still going to have to pay, in some cases, $50+ in the next couple of years once they ratchet those up. So a lot of those are already scheduled to ratchet up for the next couple of years. So a lot of folks are going to have an interest in dropping gas or reducing usage or having very competitive pricing. But we hope that we can help wean folks to using less gas and start switching over to electricity to get ahead of that. But just from a cost standpoint, we're talking $600 a year for fixed charges. That is really going to help folks. Yes. Please.
I don't know if you would call that the readiness to serve charge or the overhead. My questions are, so assuming we contract with you or join you,
yep.
Then when people get a bill, when people get their gas bill, will it be part of the village bill? Will it come from you? Where will that bill come from? And will that readiness to serve charge, let's call it that, be the same that we're now paying? And does everyone who pays for the gas, whether you're in Dayton or Yellow Springs or Athens, wherever, pay the same?
On the first one, the bill process remains the same. That center point is the provider, the person distributing and administering the gas program. We would be essentially become the supplier side of that bill. In terms of the third question, does everyone pay the same rate? It's dependent on what Luke and Philip get for us as part of the broker. If we go to the market right now, we're going at a historic low that it's in the $2. So it depends on the contract that we sign now. It would be a different price from what Athens may have signed. I don't know when Athens signed, but.
Yeah, they're with actually another entity, so historically working with another entity through that. So it's all about timing. Yeah, for not specifically just natural gas.
For
yes,
natural
correct.
gas,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, we've historically not been in the space. So this is new for us to go into natural gas, and that was out of demand here in the Miami Valley of folks wanting to do gas programs, and frankly, some of the Southeast Ohio ones that historically hadn't done it with us that joined more recently.
Yeah, so the onboarding process will be handled by SOPAC. That's the membership letters, all that information that goes out to our residents will be managed by SOPAC. Once we're onboarded, the charge just shows up in a regular center point bill, and they will pay it like they normally would.
Then you still pay that readiness to serve overhead?
Yes, the readiness for service remains the same based on what a center point has been authorized to charge. That's not something that we are able to influence. That's dealt with directly between center point and PUCO. So right now, I believe it's $33 for Yellow Springs, just the readiness for service charge for your typical residential gas connection.
So just, does this cost us anything?
No, it does not cost us anything. What we pass on to the customer would be what rate gets negotiated with the suppliers. So we don't have to pay anything. However, there's an opportunity for us to get additional revenues. So Luke talked about grant program or setting aside funding for particular carbon offset projects. This is something we discussed internally, and we discussed with the three brokers we're looking at, SOPAC being one of them, is okay, what does an arrangement look like if we go out and negotiate brown gas, and then we wanted to buy carbon offset credits or invest in some of the projects that SOPAC will be dealing with, which is doing carbon offsetting or their own generation projects. So there's ways that we could add an additional fee to invest in green energy projects.
So how do you make money?
So it's embedded in the administrative fee. So within the rate itself, if we've done our job correctly, we're embedded in there, and we're saving folks money if we've done the market correctly. So there's no fee coming directly from the municipalities themselves. So even though a lot of council governments have regular dues or that kind of structure, we do not have that. Ours is all volumetric built within the fees.
And that exists in the marketplace right now. So we partner with IGS for the village government consumption. That's our current broker. There's direct energy services. There's Aspen Energy Service. Many of to get to a supplier price, you're going through a broker, and so you're paying an administrative fee to the company that you're buying your service from.
But functionally, we need an entity like this to aggregate?
Yes, we could not be our own broker.
Yep.
So all this is about gas. Should we also someday be talking about electricity?
Well, electricity, we are part of the American Municipal Power, which is the Association of Public Companies. So the AMP will be the equivalent of SOPAC, absent of being an AMP partner. Did I miss anything on that?
No, that's accurate. There's a long-term relationship there with AMP for most of the communities that have munis. But we're definitely happy to talk other things that relate to electricity as it relates to technology or things that relate to the residents, that we view ourselves as a shared office. So if there's things that, again, with the grant writing position, we're hoping that we can help facilitate those opportunities to the villages, to the communities. So as there's opportunities and bigger things we can do, that we definitely are happy to engage and discuss.
Right, and from a generation perspective, we're interested in doing solar generation, and with AMP does 50 megawatt projects, big projects. you guys more in line to working with local community and smaller generation?
Both, yes.
Well,
yes.
So I think what I will add, especially for folks that, if anyone's still watching, to break it down, there's two things. So one is we are trying to save villagers money. And so gas aggregation is a way to do that. And that's why, we did our due diligence and talked to 3 providers. And I think the reason that Northway is recommending SOPEC, and Mary Ann and I were also involved in a meeting, is that their goal is to ultimately use this platform to eliminate gas and focus on renewables. And so in terms of our village values, we think that checks another box. And then there is this third aspect, which is they do have background to help us with some of our solar goals that could get us to 100% renewable. But ultimately, and I think why, I feel it's something we should move forward, is taking advantage of these cost savings as soon as possible. And we should have done this a long time ago, but the conversations have happened in the last couple months, so.
We've also had our own gas aggregation program in the past, so we're coming back to some of the basics. Oh, yes, we have 2 public hearings coming up per Luke's presentation, some of the things we have to do. So we'll have one on the 17th. Is that right, Judy? One on the 17th?
Actually, we need to decide that we want to move forward with those, right? Is that, okay. So, any other questions before we talk about how we move forward?
Did I miss anything?
No, I was just going to say, you can slide if you want.
Okay.
I don't know. I think we hit the highlights.
Okay.
It's in the packet.
Okay.
Okay, so I guess at this point, what's council feeling? Ready to move forward with public hearings? Okay.
I think so.
So I'm seeing a yes from Mary Ann, I'm seeing nods from everybody. Okay, great. So then go ahead and tell us about what we're doing next.
All right, so we will have 2 public hearings, one on Friday the 17th and one on Monday, March the 20th. And that's to meet our advertising requirements. And then we'll plan to bring back legislation on March 20th to move forward with a SOPEC on the gas aggregation. And then from a timeline perspective, it'll be a couple months to roll through the entire process. I don't know, wait for to talk about what the timeline looks like.
Yeah, we can actually lock in pricing once all those documents are in place. You guys have passed legislation enabling, since the residents have already authorized you guys through previous legislation. Once we establish that, then we can lock in price with the vendors and then you guys set up. So it'll be a couple months till residents actually see it. We can lock in this market in the short term and be ready to go. And we can talk to you guys on timing. You can do up to 2 years with natural gas programs. So that's another decision we need to work with you guys on, just decide what's right for you guys and where your appetite is for the market at the moment.
Yeah, so just to be clear, those hearings, do we have to be there?
We need 3 of us to be there.
Okay. That's what I understood from Judy's email. I just wanted to confirm that.
Yep. Okay. Any other questions? All right, Luke, Phil, thank you guys.
Thank you all very
We
much.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. We'll be seeing you again. Okay, Rebecca Potter, I believe we're going to hear about all the great things the Environmental Commission did last year.
Yes, thank you.
That's a good look, though.
Oh, thank you for staying. Yes. Yeah, so the Environmental Commission, I'm giving the 2022 year-end report. And it was a very, very active year for the Environmental Commission. I also want to thank Commission member Catherine Zimmerman for providing the format for this presentation. So first item is the CASP. In 2021, we commissioned Piper Fernway to write a climate action sustainability plan. That report was completed in January 2022. That work has continued. The Under the leadership of Marianne McQueen, we formed a CASP committee that includes Marianne, myself as EC Chair, Miami Township representation, as well as representation from a variety of our major environmentally focused nonprofit organizations in the village and township. That has been a very productive civic group, and it's engaged quite well in building better communication and collaboration between those partners. The Village Council, thank you, funded a second CASP coordinator for doing phase 2 of the CASP. Florentina Rodriguez was hired to do that work, and she started in January. So we are really looking forward to what Florentina is bringing to that position, her expertise, her ideas, her ambition, her energy, and in the next report in 2023, I think we'll have a lot of good things to speak out about it. We're going to continue to focus on implementation. 2023 is going to be the year of getting things done, prioritizing projects, building capacity and continuity, and also figuring out revenue streams that could make this a longer-term funded project, but through external funding or creative funding sources, so we won't always be coming to you. We are also very happy to say our Earth Day was fantastic in 2022, and it's going to be even more fantastic in 2023. So mark your calendars for April 23rd, Sunday afternoon, and it's going to be here. We're moving it here to this location. We had the Chimney Swift Tower built in front of the old Union Schoolhouse, thanks to the efforts of Riley Dixon, also a reporter for the news. And Riley was a sustainability champion. The sustainability champions also did a number of projects, including a seed library, which was highly successful. And we are hoping that the Swifts come to the tower in 2023. Again, Earth Week has been expanded into Earth Month, and the Habitat team continues to work very diligently in achieving a whole bunch of wonderful things, including making Mills Lawn School a certified school habitat, and that will be celebrated on Earth Day 2023. But we've had 9 entities, properties be certified as habitat properties, and they continue to expand the city or the village as a habitat community. Earth Day had over 20 vendors. As I said, the sustainability champions did great work. We launched the Down to Earth column in YS News and had 10 articles appear in 2022, and that will continue. So I know I only have 5 minutes, so I'll keep it short. So what are we starting this year? Well, we are moving toward a phase 2 of CASP. We're assisting the village and community partners on Ellis Pond. We're revising our pesticide use policy, and we're working on bringing to you a no idling ordinance. And that's just kind of the tip of the iceberg. We continue to hear ideas from the community and develop new projects. What are we continuing? Well, Earth Day, and a new banner is coming. Outreach booth at Street Fair, which was also successful in 2022, and it was great to be back at the Street Fair, held in again, and continuing that habitat work. Now, we are making a budget request this year for $7,400. If I may say, that's $100 less than last year. To support phase 2 of the CASP, support Native Habitat website. We have continued to do this in the past, and we hope we can continue to do this in 2023. To support Earth Week events, the events are growing. The event is growing. Work with the village and community partners and volunteers to address Ellis Pond. Develop a pesticide policy for council review. Develop that no idling policy. And tackling the obstacles facing our community gardens. That was also something that we began to assess in 2022. We want to move towards some solutions there in 2023. And so, thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Great work. Questions or comments? Mary Ann?
And Carmen Brown, I have to say, is the alternate member and has been an incredible leader, shown incredible leadership in so many of these endeavors.
Thank you all for the work you've done.
I think the question is how we get affirmed or not our budget. We submitted a budget in October and never have figured it out.
Right.
Whether it's approved or not approved or partially approved.
So it was definitely, I mean, it's on our radar. We factored it in. I think, has it changed since the proposal that you wrote
I
up
think
in the
we
fall?
lowered it a
Okay.
bit.
So, so first of all, it should be, in the packet in writing, and then we need to vote on it. That was, what we learned last year during our state audit. And yeah, and I guess I will just say for me, I saw a few items like community gardens that I guess I'd like to see the case being made. So I don't know, but yeah, but I think the short answer is in writing, and I think what I saw you guys do before looked like a solid proposal, and then we'll just need to discuss it and vote on it. So.
Right, and we did attempt in that proposal to have wording that would allow a little bit of flexibility, since we don't have a crystal ball, but we know the general areas that we're going to be tackling. And so, if you have any questions about any one of those projects, let us know.
Yeah, I think the only other thing that's come up is flexibility is good, but if something changes, like the Ellis Pond stuff that comes up, I think that council should talk about that and sort of, approve that as well. So.
Absolutely. Yes.
Cool.
Does anyone have any other questions?
Yeah.
Well.
Great job.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate the work.
Thank you,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you
You guys
for
are one of
your
our highly functioning commissions.
We
so,
are
yeah.
an active group and we have fun too. So.
Nice.
No, thank you all and thanks you for all you do.
Indeed. Thank you.
And thanks to the Environmental Commission. Okay, so we are going to talk about our 2022 financials.
You all got
Yeah.
handouts?
Yes. Put it up on
Our
the screen.
handout.
Yeah, because they don't have
Okay.
same either or. I gave you each a packet. It's the same that was in your packet. It's just got some notes on it, which I'm going to speak to, so it might be easier to follow. 2022 financial summary year end. Overall, we ended up with a decrease in cash of $288,000 for 2022. That's the red number to the right-ish. Way over there in the tiny little corner. If you look at total revenue for 2022, actual was $13,982,000 versus a budget of $12,392,000. So that blue line that's above the red line is a good thing. And as Josue mentioned earlier, we are conservative in our budgets in that the county auditor and the state give us conservative budgets, so we should beat them every year. That's the standard. Expense actual budget was $13,082,000 versus a budget of $15,629,000. So there was actually $3.2 million less spent, or $900,000 gain this year versus a budgeted loss of $3.2 million. Okay, did everybody follow that so far? Yep. So we budgeted revenue.
Where are you on
the middle of the page on the left side, kind of in the small numbers. So our actual revenue for 2022 is $13,982,000, and our actual expenses for 2022 were $13,082,000. So there's a $900,000 gain overall. Page 1.
So what's the 15,000, budget of 15,000, that was budgeted expenses?
Yes. So we beat the budget by $3.2 million this year. And I think it was a concerted effort. I mean, there were some positions that weren't open. Lots of other things that didn't happen.
There are a couple of things, a lot of, we had some positions that go unfilled. So we had a sergeant position that we didn't fill all year. We had a couple positions in Public Works turnover that went unfilled. We had the finance director position go unfilled a little over 3 months. So we did some vacancy management to create some savings. On the cost side, there are a couple projects that we do have encumbrances for. So in the 2022 fiscal year, they don't show up as expenses, but we know we're going to incur that expense. So one of those will be the sewer relining project. At the end of the year, council authorized us to secure another contract in light of the contract expiring, the pricing expiring. So that's going to be over $200,000 of expenses that we pushed off until 2023. We also had some additional revenue come in. We sold the CBE property to the tune of $273,000. So that's additional revenue that came in that was not budgeted. And to Amy's point, on the revenue side, we were conservative. We expected to be a little bit higher because we knew Cresco was hiring more staff, but we couldn't factor those into our pro forma because they hadn't happened yet. So that increased our revenues.
It's page 2. This is just a breakdown. Sorry.
So the fact that we had this gain other than this loss, would you say that it's, or how much of it is the fact that we really were down staff? In other words, we needed staff that we didn't have, and now we have them, or we will have.
We're actually still down on staff with Johnny's staff, for sure.
And projects that we should have done or wanted to have done that we still need to do. I mean,
Yes, it does. We can talk about some of the numbers that are highlighted in the report now, but if you want a more
just the general.
So certainly positions, vacancies were a contributor to cost savings. There are expenses that are not showing up in 2022, but they are encumbrances for 2023. So one of those will be the sewer relining. That's $251,000 in sewer relining. In electrical capital, we have $136,000 that are encumbrances. And the electric operating fund, we have $95,000 that are still remaining encumbrances. So when you look at that encumbrances, we have almost $1.2 million in encumbrances, many of which will materialize. Not all of it, some of it will. But even that 1.2 encumbrances is significantly less than the overall authorized budget for the year, which was $15,629,000. Did I miss anything, Amy?
Nope. So if you go to page 2, just look at the red for a minute. The red shows the funds that we spent money out of and used more than we put in, okay? And those, to a number, they're the enterprise funds. So it was a concerted effort not to move money from the general fund. The general fund had a $549,000 gain to support some of these other funds just to make them more self-supporting. So you'll see where you can see where all those negative red numbers are all their capital and enterprise funds. So that's kind of the big picture of what are we going to do with all this extra money from reciprocal tax. That's going to support capital, enterprise, infrastructure. It truly is, because we can't fund it from general forever. So that's just another thought process. Third page, just a little more detail on the expenses.
Oh, I'm sorry.
All right. It's fine. So we used 91% of the budget for 2022. And we just talked about, we had $1.2 million from 22 money that carried over that will be spent in 2023. Which means there's open POs for those big projects like this one behind us that didn't get done in 1 year. There's just a little more detail by fund. So if you look at the next page, revenue analysis by fund, it's the same thing. It's the same numbers from page 1, but it just tells you which funds collected more. General fund collected 131% of what was budgeted. And then we had The water operating fund collected 104% what was budgeted. Solid waste collected 121%. 1.6 million over budget was collected, and it mostly came in and through the general fund. And we collected 112% of budget overall. Okay. The bank report, that just tells you where our cash is. We have impressed cash, is just petty cash. We have drawers down in the utility office they make change from. We moved $6 million into Star, Ohio in late November from West Banco because the rates were better. And we have $1.7 million in Raymond James. I think that was the sale of the land money went in there. We made 2 deposits into Raymond James this year. Mayor's Court, small amount. West Banco General, so now we have 3.1 million in West Banco, whereas at the beginning of the year, we had 9.6 million in West Banco. So we're moving our money around to maximize our interest. And then West Banco payroll, that's just a zero funded account that gets, money goes in and money goes out with every pay. Questions on where our money is? Judy will talk more about that. Utility roundup, we do an annual accounting of that. We started the year with utility roundup with $17,880 in the account. We have 467 people contributing to the account, which is 22% of the total utility accounts. We generated $9,500 in revenue and donations this year. We assisted 51 people with that revenue. And we, to the tune of $11,972. So the fund at the end of the year is down to 15,000. We had a small decrease in it, and I think it was changed to the policy that you could ask for utility funds for more than 1 year. And then council commission, it's just a brief glimpse on where council money has gone. The budget was 41,000. The year-to-date expense was 8,770. Unexpended was 32,000. It mostly went to support. We supported both Kwanzaa 2021, which we paid in January of 22, and Kwanzaa 22, which we paid in December of 22. The block party, some speakers, plants purchasing, neighborhood gardens, special events are the funds that were expended by council this year.
And I think, what were we going to highlight about this?
Yes, we've got some encumbrances booked on this expense. That's that 16,000. Much of this encumbrance are contributions that council had authorized towards Pride and other community events. And we did not do the billing against council commissions for those services. We absorbed them in the general fund. Part of why it didn't get billed, we had that transition from the finance director and we absorbed the expenses internally. But they are showing up as encumbrances in this budget. We are going to clear that. So that's going to, the net result of that clearing it, we're just going to cancel those POs, is going to show that that expense didn't incur at the council commission budgets, but we did incur those expenses on the general fund and the street funds. And some of those expenses will be the staffing of the centers for the John Bryant Center for all those special events, some of the public right-of-way barriers and tapes and other things that the streets department contributed towards those large events. So, but for this budget, we want to make sure to list those encumbrances so that you have an idea of what was totally encumbered from council commission's budget, but we didn't build.
Any other questions?
Gavin?
So just on that, just real quick on this last piece. So is this information shared with the staff team? With the council budget issue? The council budget summary?
That is shared with the team?
Yeah.
So the management team sees all these reports.
Great. We've had conversations in the past as they have alluded to the idea that our budget is in like some deep distress because of council spending, and it's just not accurate. Like this is not it's just, we're not spending that much money.
Okay.
Okay. And then the other.
So just in general, is it customary to put someone's name over travel and training, P&Z training, Carmen? Is that customary?
Yeah.
Is that something that usually happens?
It just so that we knew what it was.
Oh, okay.
I think I just actually clipped it out of the.
So before it goes up publicly, usually the person's name is removed?
Yeah, sure.
Yes, I'm sorry about that, Carmen. I'll make sure to check that out.
And then the other question I just had is, so when are you expecting that we'll get our first like quarterly budget update?
We are already closed for February, so I think March will be similar. The one holdout is Raymond James is usually about a week to 10 days after month end. I just closed it today though, so I talked to him and he's like, call me. I'll give you the numbers.
Okay. So we'll finalize the schedule, and that's something that gets put together with Judy on the schedule when we report. We move to 30 days after the closing of the reporting period. So March 30th is the end of the first quarter. So we will we target to close our books by April 30th so that we can present either the first or the second meeting of that May meeting.
Sounds good. And so just so everybody's looking at it, we talked about it in Finance Committee, but this is a significant difference between what we're budgeting in terms of expenses and what we've got in terms of revenue. And so part of the reason I'm asking about it in this context is that at the quarterly check, that's the first time for us to see, are we on this kind of track again? And as we're thinking about budgeting for the future, thinking about how to get that a little closer, so that right now, for instance, we were talking about having an over $3 million budget deficit this year. Well, we had one last year that didn't show up practically. Like we had $3.2 million. So anyway, just to say that there's a lot of money that's in the budget that either isn't spent and that we gain more revenue, and that the best time for us to check on how we're actually doing is going to be in those quarterly meetings, which in my time, we haven't done those yet. So I'm looking forward to those conversations, and I think we all should be too, because we have more money than is showing up in the budget itself.
Yeah, I think maybe the other takeaway on the flip side is, again, underscoring the fact that this looks better because we did not have positions filled and we deferred projects and so forth. So I guess I want to balance, the positives and negatives moving forward. So, and to say, this reciprocal tax thing, if we end up passing that at the next meeting, is going to be one piece of getting to a balanced budget, but it's not going to solve all the issues.
But I think the other point, or at least what I was taking away from what Gavin said, is that being on top, having a quarterly understanding of where we are is important, and we didn't last year for the most part because of financial things.
Right, but prior finance directors, we did have that, and Amy's going to get us back on track. So, right. Thanks, Amy. All right, treasurer's report.
That is a hard act to follow.
Oh, by the way, we used to, do we need to approve this? I know we did quarterly.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so so that was one of the things we did in the past. When we had quarterly reports, is we approved them. So I'll make a motion to approve the 2022 year-end financials.
I second that motion.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay, Judy.
Thank you. Holy smoke for remembering that.
I figured a quid pro quo. All right.
So you've got that treasurer's report in front of you. You've got a quarterly comparison. So as of December 31, 2022, the village had under active investment $10,996,668. So that is an increase of $621,159 since the last report, which was in September of 2022. And that is derived from combining Star Ohio, Raymond James, and West Banco. In the annual comparison, interest earnings for all of 22, Raymond James brought in $20,309. West Banco brought in $102,517, and Star Ohio brought in $22,687 for a total interest income in 2022 of $146,384. Year-end 2021 showed the village with $10,091,221 under active investment. $494,965 was with Raymond James, and $9,596,255 was with West Banco. Over the last 3 years, we see the effects of that significant market decline, that really pretty significant correction in 2021. And thanks also to that interest rate that got locked in with West Banco, improvement continued into 2022. And Star Ohio interest rates got to the point where it made sense to move finances back into, or move funds back into Star Ohio out of West Banco. So you got those cash balance reports for the end of 2022, end of 2021, and end of 2020. It gives you that COVID picture right there. And there are the pie charts to go with it, showing that we're starting to get a more balanced portfolio as interest rates moderate. Brad Drager's quarterly report is most of the packet, and that was written in February, and it's got a good analysis of what were then current market conditions and projections. You've got Raymond James Holdings noted in the middle of that treasurer's report, and also in the report included. Right now, the village has funds in Star Ohio and Raymond James investment account. Interest on the sweep account at West Banco is, as of February 24th, earning 3.5%. As of January 31st, the Raymond James investment account securities were earning an average of 3.19% on a 1.75-year commitment. Sweep account rates 3.5 with almost immediate availability. And we need to check in regularly with West Banco to negotiate higher returns and maybe lock in a good rate depending on what starts happening with the market. Star Ohio, as of January 31, was earning 4.72%, which is fantastically better than the 2.95 yield in September. Treasury rates are starting to come up, and if you watch them, then they're starting to go back down again. Brad Drager's quarterly report is making that prediction. His firm is very confidently predicting recession in the near future, which is going to start affecting those rates. And so we are very glad to have Brad Drager for investment advice, finance committee, and yes, I will join the club in thanking Amy Kemper for working for us and staying here for a very long time. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's also always good to highlight from perspective that when Marianne and I first came on council, we were earning negative on our investments for a variety of reasons. So, we did for a while, earn a lot when the market was great. As Judy said, it's stabilized, but it's huge that, we're, seeing gains because for, I think our first 5 years on council, we had millions invested that we were getting no return on. So it was not a good scenario. Okay, any questions? All right.
Thank you.
So I believe we're at the manager's report.
All right. All right, if you had a chance to drive through Dayton Street and Walnut, you see that we've been busy. So the team has been able to make it across the parking lot through the laundromat. The laundromat's taken a little extra work to get those storm drains in. We're now at Walnut Street. So we're going to be moving Walnut all the way to Clift and then head over to, on Clift to Winter over the next month. So for next 2 weeks, we'll be on Walnut Street. Some of that timeline is dependent on how much limestone rock we hit. And so we ask our residents to be patient. We're going to put out additional notifications as to what the specific work is going to be done on the street, on the sidewalks. We're going to put some graphics out there and inform our residents. We've been informing council of the progress on this project. We understand that not everyone tunes into our council meetings, which, I hope that everyone would. But anyway, so we'll get more additional information out on what's ahead on this project. I've included a variety of things in my manager's report. Among them, in addition to the raise grant that we've submitted, we're looking at other federal opportunities, one in particular with Senator Brown's programmatic and congressional directed spending appropriation. So we're going to be working on a couple opportunities to submit by end of March. So we've got that in the works. We've submitted our claims on the National Opioid Settlement Funds. We're We're expecting a little bit more, but we'll be getting about $1,300 for opioid services in the village. We also finalized a submission with FEMA to get reimbursed for some of the COVID expenses that were not reimbursed through the CARES money. So we expect around $8,000 in reimbursement for things that were eligible. Small amounts, but they all add up. And I will take any questions on my report, or included in the report.
Good, nothing.
Any questions? Okay. Yeah, so just, one of the opportunities, because it'll relate to just something I said I would do, is looking at expanding the municipal broadband. And there's been a lot of interest and traction. And actually Wayne Goulden, who was here earlier, talked about how amazing the service is, which frustrates me like every time I hear, but one day. The PALs mentioned they need follow-up. And then I mentioned Market Coactive, even though I know he's not in the pilot program.
I will follow up with those individuals. And a quick update, Friday, we were at 48 signed subscribers out of 137. So we're making some headway. We've got a lot more to do, but we're dependent on outside fiber contractors. The week prior to me leaving, we had all of the downtown, the backbone fiber laid out for the downtown businesses. So the section where marks former businesses, all of that has been wired and the boxes installed. We did the other side of Xenia Avenue. So those downtown businesses, we've got all of that area wired. So we'll be making headway on those downtown businesses. It's taken some time, but we've got 48 customers. The vast majority, I would say, I haven't heard a negative feedback. I think they're all happy with the level of service, the speeds, and the uptime that they're getting. Thank you for bringing up Wayne Goulden. Wayne Goulden has created a website and a testing protocol where he's testing the network 24/7. He's done it on his own. Apparently, I didn't know this until just recently that Wayne is the network guru in town. So
How many of 100 and what?
137 that are subscribed, 48 are fully connected and are receiving internet service.
Are there any of those 100 and, are there any people that have opted out or have decided not to continue?
None that have unsubscribed from the program once being connected.
Once being connected?
Once being
Okay.
connected. Is that your question?
Yeah.
Yeah. So none. I spoke with Ellis Jacob last week, and we're going to finalize within the next 2 weeks our application to be considered part of the Lifeline project. So that's going to be in the work. Ellis Jacobs is leading that on the legal side.
Okay, let's shift to old business. And Mary Ann, I'm going to turn over the housing work session piece to you.
So you had in your packet a sort of general proposal for a housing committee. And this was compiled from feedback at our housing workshop. It seems that while we recognize there are a lot of various things the village government could do in terms of promoting the housing that we need, we identified rental housing as a primary type, and perhaps also attached condo housing is the highest need, probably focusing on middle and lower income, though there was also recognition that we could use housing across the spectrum. We also decided, or it seemed, I think, that we agreed that the glass farm would be the most likely reasonable site for the village government to actually work on a housing project. So what you have in front of you sort of says that the charge would be initially to focus on the glass farm for a project and to develop an RFP. I've suggested a composition that would be 2 council members the village manager, the director of public works, the planning and zoning administrator, and then in any other members that that group decided upon, either permanent or temporary, as well as utilizing resource people that we might need. And it could be chaired by the village manager and a council person, co-chaired. And I guess I'd suggest that the dates and the setup be done through the village manager's office, the meetings. Then there are a number of issues that would need to be decided in order to decide what concept design or what kind of concept plan would be developed, and they're listed here. Timeline that has been suggested is to form the committee in March, work in April and June to develop the concept plan, which would really go through dealing with a lot of these questions, and then develop an RFP that could be put out in August. And then Josue put in the amount that he thought might be needed to develop a conceptual design. And then there's a parking lot that has other issues that had been identified. So, up for differing opinions, ideas, whatever.
Kevin, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think this is a great start because we didn't have anything. We did move forward with the housing retreat so that we can have the opportunity to talk to the level of detail that we did on all of these things. So I think this is an appropriate outcome of that meeting. I think the points in terms of the timeline and the direction that we're going, it certainly reflects what we talked about, and this looks like a good next step. Guess, are we gonna make decisions about who does what here, or?
I think so. Okay. I mean, personally, I think we need to get this going ASAP. And one thing I appreciated about what Marianne wrote up is like action oriented around Glass Farm. One other update that Marianne and I learned from Johnny is that, remember at the work session, Johnny was concerned about the Corey Street property, but we found out that actually the price tag on dealing with the stormwater is $155,000. So it's not out of the, it's not something we couldn't do.
It was a sewer line, it wasn't stormwater.
Oh, yeah, I mean sewer, sorry. Yeah, you're right, sewer. But, it sounded like initially a feeling like that was a non-starter, but I mean, that's the kind of thing, like with the Sherrod Brown stuff, we could get a grant for it and like get that going. So that's back on the table in my mind.
So that being said, then we could continue with this plan for Glass Farm and start moving in that direction. But we could also at the same time be looking to get funding for Corey. Okay.
So I think this housing committee should meet as soon as possible from my perspective. Gavin, did you have?
Yeah, I'd like to hear from Gavin and Carmen, any things you think aren't here or you'd want to be in this or whatever.
Well, I mean, it seemed like a solid summer to me. It's also something I'm interested in, and I don't know what others' interests are, but it's something that I would be happy to be part of a committee that's working on it.
Yeah, I absolutely am excited about even having the opportunity to sit down and have a really productive work session with a clear path forward. We made some decisions about prioritizing what we were going to do as council. And one of the things that I really appreciated was the feedback that we got from Johnny and also from Denise Swinger, because I think that provided us with an additional nudge in the direction of apartments and affordable housing, and people, you know, it's affordable housing very generally is 30% of your gross income. That's what the federal government says. So just go with that. For mortgage and rent, 30%. That means affordable as far as the feds are concerned. Saying all that to say, yeah, this looks good. And I think that before we start throwing around ideas about money regarding concepts, we need to have our first meeting and think about, before we think about design and all that, we need to sit down and think about, we need to have a first meeting of this.
And so I think that it's critical that the committee both be communicating with council, but also with the community.
Of course.
So that people know that this is happening. And really, there's a lot to consider. Just thinking about the glass farm, let alone anything else. So I would be willing to be on this committee. I would be interested, unless someone else, and Gavin had indicated he would be. Is there someone else that you want to be on it?
Absolutely.
So it could be you and Gavin.
Yeah, I mean, I think my sense is that we're all interested.
Right.
Do
that.
I know, so, yeah, we could technically. So, yeah, for me, as long as we're getting it started, then, you know, we can, you know, let's get going and then go from there.
Yeah,
So,
and to that point, about all of us wanting to do it, we could certainly circle back around and do Housing Retreat 2.0. Have involved, but that's.
But maybe, you know, that's where, let's set up that meeting and like structure that second work session, like, right? You know, like kind of start to think about priorities, recommendations. So, all right, so I'm good with that. So it sounds like Gavin and Carmen are gonna work with Josue. You guys are gonna meet, and then let's say at least by the first meeting in April, a meeting has happened, and so, yeah.
So maybe if the committee meets, looks at these issues to consider and has proposals for these issues, or some of them, and then comes back to council. So it's probably going to be an iterative back and forth. And this might be this timeline might not be realistic.
Well, you know, and again,
Depending on
like,
how often.
we don't have to unpack everything.
Start.
So, okay. Josue, what were you gonna say?
No, I was just gonna reiterate that we're putting Corey Street back on as a potential item or site. And so, but that's something that I'll follow up with Gavin and Carmen, and obviously it's a site like any other site that we might consider.
Because again, I mean, 155,000 to me it's no longer a non-starter, right? So, but you guys can talk more about that.
Right.
Okay.
So just to be clear, Josue, can you send us some suggested times?
I'll send you some availability over the next 30 days, because I think we might need to squeeze 2 meetings over the next month. So.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. So here's what I want to do with single-use plastics. So you probably already see there is going to be a town hall on March 9th. So, all right, let me first of all clarify who on council, because I was not happy with the last town hall when I wanted to participate. Is there anyone on council that's planning to attend that meeting and actively participate? Because we can only have 2. And I was locked out the last time when I had said at the meeting that I was going to participate. So.
You don't have to worry about me being there. I'll watch it.
Right.
I'll defer to others.
Okay. All right. And actually, I'll probably will just be watching as well. But I just want to, if anybody like specifically wants to actively participate, I want to, whenever we have town halls, I want to clarify that, because that's different from a work session or whatever.
And I will take responsibility for
It's okay.
So what did we end up with? Brian, you, and someone else?
Actually, I'm going to be driving back from Wisconsin, so I
Oh.
think I will just be listening. So, but if anyone like definitely wants to actively like speak or, whatever at that meeting, it's just good for us to agree on that.
So what is the date of that?
The night, this Thursday.
This Thursday at 7
Yeah, I
p.m.
won't be here, so I won't.
Okay. All right.
And Brian, just for it was initially organized with Mark Heiss as a focus on the downtown, on the businesses.
Right.
And it was advertised as a town hall. The primary audience is going to be to hear from the businesses.
Right. But somebody made a big deal about, like sunshine, so I just want to get that out of the way, because I don't like that kind of stuff going on.
But we will need to say somebody, who that somebody.
No, it was not Judy. Judy just like clarified, so. Okay, so then the next thing is, because we're doing that, and because we also have an executive session, I don't want to have an in-depth discussion on this. It's complicated. So I want to just kind of highlight why it came up at the last meeting, all right? I think for anybody that paid attention to October Street Fair, it was great, but balls were dropped, recycling bins weren't set up, there was a lot of waste, and related to that, I think in terms of the village brand and our values, all right, we need to think about environmental sustainability. Now, to me, so the recommendation was, related to events, why don't we think about single-use plastic ban? Like that could be a way to address that. So in my mind, I see this as a long-term sort of think about events and then think about more broadly. We have a lot of folks who, get that environmental sustainability is something we have to address. And so, plenty of our food and beverage providers have already figured out not to use styrofoam, to use paper, et cetera. But again, I see that as being longer term. I do think though in the short term, and so I guess I'm setting up some things that could be talked about on Thursday, is there are 3 things we could do with our events that I think are pretty basic. So I'll start from the bottom. For folks that are, selling non-food and beverage, not allowing those vendors to use plastic bags. They use paper bags. It's not a big deal. It's not going to cost them that much, and it could cut down on the waste. All right. Food vendors, the reality is they make a lot of money at street fair, and so I think requiring that they have paper packaging and bamboo, not that expensive. I've asked some of our folks that already do that in town. And so, I'd like to see that happen. I think that could happen in June. And then there's this issue around the plastic cups, all right? There are some challenges with compostable cups. I think Mark said something about that at the last meeting. In the past, we had refillable cups, but if we can't come to some agreement on that, why not just have beer served in cans? All right. I realize that might not make as much money, but the last street fair, beer was going at $8 a cup. I think that could be something in the short term that's not that big of a deal. People might like draft more, but they're certainly going to buy cans of beer because they're going to want to drink beer. So those are kind of the 3 things I'm putting on the table that I think could happen in June if we can't figure out some of these other things. But again, I recognize there's a lot of stuff to talk about with single-use plastics, all right? But ultimately, and especially all the social media I saw after the fact, even though we're not organizing the event, it's going to come back on the village. And there were a lot of comments about like, how could Yellow Springs not recognize some of these things? So that's what I want to put out there. I don't know if anybody else wants to say anything else at this point, but I think it's going to be a good discussion on Thursday. And then ultimately, I hope the chamber and our local businesses are going to work with us on this issue, because
environmental sustainability and, what's going on with the climate is a serious thing. And so we got to all work together on it. So anyway,
Can I,
yes.
we already know this, but just to get some clarification, if in fact the starting point is to target events, Amy, does that require legislation or can that simply be a communication to event sponsors or coordinators?
Wouldn't have to be legislation, maybe. See, I'm paying attention.
It wouldn't have to be legislation. What we talked about at the last meeting was some type of ordinance that we could put on the books. The more that I research that and look into it, the more complicated that becomes from an enforcement perspective. And so I think what you're describing is just a perfect solution with using the events, because those are permitted events, right? And so, and working with the chamber and the vendors, I think that would accomplish a lot of the same goals.
Right. And we do have, ultimately, alcohol permits don't happen unless the village and the chief sign off on them. So, okay.
So Amy, just for clarity, we can make them part of our permitting process.
We would make it part of the permitting process, yes. And if council wanted to pass a resolution to do that, we could do so, however you wanted to handle that. I don't know that it's necessary. And I need some more clarification on the permitting process, because I think it's actually the chamber that issues the permit. Is that correct?
Well, the village issues the permit for the special event. In terms of the vendors, they go through a registration process directly with the chamber.
Okay.
Which is something that we were looking to address as well as part of the vendor registration.
Right. Right. Gavin? Thanks, Amy.
So I'm just making sure, I feel like I missed a memo or something. Like, is this written because maybe it's because you weren't here at the last meeting, but you were the one who wanted to talk about it. I'm just trying to understand, I don't ever remember us talking about this before. Did something happen that, was this part of a goals discussion? How did we get here?
Okay, so it was in the Climate Action Sustainability Plan goals, or it is in there. And it's I think more being elevated because meetings are happening with the village manager about street fair and other events and that sort of thing. So no, we have not had an in-depth discussion about it beyond, I think that it came up in the last meeting. So, yeah. Okay.
Two meetings ago was a specific response to requests from citizens of what was possible around single-use plastics. And we had been following the issue or the legislation in Cincinnati, Cleveland, Columbus, Bexley. And so the rules, the state legislator had put in moratoriums or just legislation that would pause any of those legislation at those cities to go in effect during the pandemic. Since then, those provisions by the state have sunset, so it created an environment to revisit that single-use plastic bans.
Yeah, no, I think I get it. I was just trying to get, I just don't remember it being part of the goals discussion, and so I'm trying to figure out if it was just at the last meeting, it feel like, oh, maybe it's a simple thing. If it was a simple thing, then it's
right.
Okay, fine, we just do a simple thing. But then when it turned into having a business, what do you call it, town hall, et cetera, it sounds like it's a bigger thing. And I'm like, well, is this something that that's all. I'm just trying to understand the context. Thank you.
Well, I think the goal is lowering our waste. That's where it gets into our goals. And in terms of the single event, Brian you had that hard copy of the green, zero waste green events from Columbus. And as I was researching it, I noticed Rural Action out of Athens, Ohio is doing that. So it seems like it's something that even in Ohio, it's happening in not only in terms of municipalities trying to do zero waste, but in particular, zero waste events.
Carmen?
Oh, no, I was just.
Watching the time.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, so I'll just say, I think the urgency has become, I saw Pride's already, sent a notice out for vendors, and so, I think we've got an opportunity, and so.
And we're going to have a town hall, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay. So, I mean, I think we're gonna talk about it on Thursday, but, yeah, like real quick comments. All right, go ahead.
Just a couple of things. First of all, I will be the first to admit that the ball got dropped on recycling for that last street fair because we were a brand new bunch of people who had never run a street fair before. That includes the village staff that was with us, with the exception of Johnny, had never run a street fair before. The ball that got dropped was we were under the assumption that that was something Rumpke would do as they do recycling through the rest of the village. We were wrong. It was Greene County, and we couldn't react fast enough with Greene County to make that happen. I've apologized before, and I'll apologize again. In regards to your comments, Marianne, about zero waste events, there are no zero waste events in the state of Ohio. They come close, but it takes years to get there.
It's aspirational.
It is aspirational, and I work with through the Buckeye Trail Association. I work with now I'm going to draw a blank, the rural action in trying to make that, because we've tried to make Trail Fests also zero waste. It's just, it's aspirational, but it takes time to get there. And that's basically all I wanted to say. And we'll have, I actually question though at this point with that change, if there's a need for a business town hall, but I papered all of downtown on Sunday, making sure that every business had an invitation. But at any rate, the majority of the discussion, I think, will happen at the Thursday afternoon meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Dino.
Yeah, real quick. It's not as simple. I'm speaking on behalf of all the businesses. Oh, they're not here. Yeah. But anyways, it's not a simple project when we look at a business side of it. When I heard the discussion come up, it's not a simple thing for us just to flip over to do this. I get it. I understand it. I'm disappointed that it came about and that the stakeholders weren't involved, that we just kind of got blindsided, so to speak, that we kind of blindsided on it. You know, as business, just like what you guys do, we have to forecast out, we have to budget out, I have to do all those kinds of things. I can't speak for anyone else. I have to do that for my business and budget out. So when you're changing the rules in the middle of the game, I get it. I understand where we want to go. But for me just to turn over and do something, it's not going to happen very easily. It's not an easy flip of the switch. Okay, look, since this came up last Monday or 2 weeks ago, I've done more research and had vendors come out to visit me. So I now understand more so what the composting goes on, what goes on with Rumpke, where they go with each landfill, who gets what, when, where, why. We get what's going on here. The Bexley rules seem to be like a good rule if we're going to apply it for everybody. I think we may be overreaching a little bit, but that's for you guys to do. You make the rules. We'll jump through the hoops and do what we have to do. But we'll go more in depth on this on Thursday. But that's where we're coming from the side of a business. There's just a little bit more involved in it than for you to say, do this, and we go, oh, we can't do it that quickly. So there's a turnaround time.
Absolutely.
Right. Thanks,
Thank you,
Dino.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we are, I just want to emphasize we're sensitive to that. I also want to say I've always been a big supporter of events. That's what makes our community thriving and keeps things going. So thank you, guys. All right. Future agenda items. Anything that on this very long list that people think is missing?
Is there time at the next meeting to bring the Environmental Commission budget?
Yes. Yeah, let's add that. Okay.
Board and commission reports.
Oh, yeah, we got board and commission reports, so we'll do it
Be
then.
part of that.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, then I'm going to entertain a motion to move into executive session for, Judy, did you want to read that eloquent reason why?
Yeah, this would be for the purpose of considering the annual evaluation of the village manager as it relates to his employment and compensation.
Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. And then we roll call?
And was that Stokes?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes.
Thank you. Pausch?
Yes.
Stokes?
Yes.
McQueen?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
DeVore Leonard?
Yes.
Thank you.